Order, order. Jim Shannon to move the motion. Jim.
Mr Chairman, we have considered the compensation for women affected by state pension changes. Can I first of all, Mr Chairman, thank each and every one of the members who are here to speak in this debate. I'm greatly encouraged, as the people in the audience should be encouraged, the WASPI women who are here to ask us as MPs to speak for them. Mr Chairman, this is an issue that none of us are not aware of. My emails and in the last few days have been incredible, and they would not understand the unfairness of what has happened. But let me take a moment to put it into context. I need the context, first of all, to set the scene. I'm very conscious, Mr Chairman, I'll give you my commitment earlier on that I'll speak for a period of time to give everyone else a chance to contribute. The WASPI women are the generation of women born in the 50s who have been adversely affected by the changes to the state pension age in the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. They argue that they were not given adequate notice of transitional arrangements to adjust to the increase in their state pension age from 60 to 65 or 66, depending on the date of their birth. That's the crux of this. That's the crux of this debate. I'm very happy to give way. Yeah.
I thank the Honourable Member for Stratford for securing this debate and the great work that he's doing. I should just say, Sir Gary, that I unfortunately have to leave early and therefore I won't be speaking. But can I just pick him up? He did say to start with that the so-called WASPI women argue they weren't properly advised and informed. And yet the Stage 1 report produced by the Ombudsman did actually confirm that they were not properly advised and informed. Would he?
Thank the Honourable Gentleman for that. He is absolutely right. When I come to that point in my correspondence, I will be confirming that. It's all about fairness and equality, and quite clearly, with respect to the Minister and the Government, they have fallen down in this.
On that point, once again, I too would like to congratulate my colleague for securing this debate. He's a champion for women, not only his own constituency but across the UK on this issue. Does he feel like me that the budget in the last week has been a complete and total missed opportunity? The government could have done something for these women if it really cared. The government was able to step in and resolve issues to do with the Post Office. Why hasn't it been able to step in on this issue and show a bit of compassion and demonstrate that they are prepared to solve this issue? 260,000 women have died since this campaign started in 2015. That is a disgrace, and the government should be acting now.
My honourable friend and colleague is absolutely right, and that's why we're all here to make that case. The WASPI women claim that this has caused them financial hardship, emotional distress, health problems, and as many, they've had to work longer than expected, rely on benefits or use their savings to cope with the gap in their income. Just 1 wee second. Can I also make the Honourable Member for Dudley North is a strong supporter of WASPI women, and he's not able to come today due to a prior engagement, but he does add the support for everyone else here. I'm happy to give way.
Thank you, Mr Streeter, and I also thank the Honourable Member for Strangford for securing this this debate. 8,000 WASPI women live in my constituency of Somerton and Frome. Many of them have been in touch with me. They're at their wits' end. They don't know how they will manage financially. One constituent has told me that they've had to sell their home. So does the Honourable Member agree with me that ministers should accept the clear findings of maladministration within the Ombudsman's Stage 1 report, and that the government should act swiftly to commit to meeting the compensation recommendations as soon as the final report is published, if the government cared?
Absolutely, and here to that, as we all say. They also contend that they have been discriminated against on the grounds of sex and age, and they have been disproportionately impacted by the changes compared to men and younger women. And I agree very much with this assertion on behalf of those in the audience today. Actions to inform these women are felt to have been inadequate, and I'm using a very gentle language to say that, and did not go far enough. The changes to the state pension age were primarily enacted through legislative measures, such as the Pension Acts of 1995 and 2011. Government claimed that these changes were publicised through official government publications and announcements in the belief that these facilities were accessible to the public. Fact is, they weren't, and that's what they... Absolutely, yeah.
I'm grateful to my honourable friend for giving way, and I too commend him on securing this really important debate. And I think he hits the nub of the unfairness here. It wasn't even one Pensions Act that affected these women. Many of these women were then subsequently impacted by a further Pensions Act in 2011, so hit twice by the same injustice. And it's all fine and well for the government to say that they don't accept this unfairness. The reality is that the Parliamentary and Health Service Ombudsman has already ruled that there was maladministration in the functioning of this policy. Isn't it time that the government just accepted that and did what's right by these women?
Yeah, it certainly is, and I wholeheartedly agree.
Jim Shannon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wholeheartedly agree with what the honourable gentleman said, and yes, there is maladministration. I'm going to use that word in my correspondence shortly. Indeed, many of the women concerned may not be actively engaged with government or had knowledge of or access to government publications. In this case, how could they be informed to the extent that it would have made the difference? And that's the crux of the matter, the crux of the debate, and why we're all here. Equality for women in the pension system, there's been a level of unfairness. It is important to remember that women born in the 50s entered a labour market in a society that was different to what young women experience today. They began working in the 60s in their teens in a workforce where women were paid less than men and were expected to leave their jobs when they married or began a family. Quite happy to give way.
I congratulate my honourable friend on securing this debate and for his powerful opening speech. I'm sure my honourable friend will agree it's important that we get on the record from the Minister here today that the DWP accept the findings of the Stage 1 report of maladministration and, most importantly, act swiftly to compensate the women and the families of the women who have passed whilst waiting for compensation.
I thank the Honourable Leader for that intervention. Everybody's interventions so far have added to this debate and reinforced the issue, which we're all... back in that time when ladies started to work, there were no remunerated childcare schemes in existence. It was not standard practice for them to be offered access to work pension schemes. So really, the DWP, with respect, Minister, have fallen down in this. They admitted, the DWP admitted in 2009 that direct communication with people affected by increases in state pension age was limited. And in 1995, leaflets explained the changes were available from the benefits agent, but only on request. In other words, if you wanted anything about it, if they even knew they asked for it, that's what you should have done. But the fact is, the DWP have a responsibility. 16 million voluntary letters in the form of automatic pension forecasts rejecting state pension entitlements, including to women aged at the time over 50. These letters did not, Mr. Chairman, did not include any details of state pension age or mention that state pension age was changing. Therefore, women were not fully notified, and that's what this debate's about. When we look back specifically to those years between 1995 and 2000, we reminded in this paper we lived in a relatively pre-internet world where information was not so readily available at the click of a finger, and social media did not exist. In the late 90s, we only had 5 TV channels, 24, and a 24-hour broadcasting was still a thing of the future. The DWP survey of 2004 asked working age adults about awareness of state pension age equalisation. The results found that of those who were aware of the fact, 47% got their information from TV advertising, 37% were only informed by reading a newspaper, and only 2% cited the pension service as their source of information. Now, the pension service have the responsibility, and they fell down badly when it comes to this. 98% of those who qualified didn't even know from the state pension what should have been happening. So it's a real massive issue which has to be addressed. Despite the efforts made through television and newspaper advertising, accessibility to what we see now as those most basic avenues of communication were so limited to those women who were not security housed or in unstable domestic environments. The Welshie women deserve to be compensated for the injustice they have had to face, and that the compensation should be based on the principles of recognition, restitution and reconciliation. And I would suggest in my 3 R's, it's almost like going back to school again, Mr. Chairman, the 3 R's, but the 3 R's here apply to the Welshie woman and the pension. The first principle of compensation is recognition, and quite clearly there's a lot to do. This means that the government should acknowledge the harm and suffering caused by the impact of changes to the state pension age and the inadequate communication of these changes and the failure to consult with the women concerned for the reasons I have outlined previously. Recognition is important for restoring the dignity and the trust of the women in this situation and for validating their experiences and grievances. Recognition is also a precondition for achieving justice and reconciliation, as it shows that government is willing to take responsibility and to make amends for its actions. So that's what this is about today. It's about addressing the issue of There's been to date a resistance to offer a formal apology to the WASPI woman, arguing that actions were lawful and reasonable. And let's be quite clear, they were not. However, this instance has been challenged by the Parliamentary and Health Service Ombudsman, the PHSO, which found in 2021 that the Department for Work and Pensions had committed maladministration, as the Honourable Gentleman had referred to in an earlier intervention, by failing to act quickly enough to inform the women about the changes to their state pension age. The PHSO also found that DWP had not given due regard to the impact of the changes on the women's lives and had not offered them any adequate support or guidance. PHSO recommended that the government should apologise to the women, pay them the compensation for the distress and the inconvenience caused by the DWP's maladministration. I use that word because it's the right word, because it describes exactly what happened. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair, and I thank the Honourable Gentleman for the speech he's making so far. Does he agree with me? People have now waited 3 years since the report he's just outlined there, and the longer this goes on, that justice delayed is justice denied, and that the government should, as the Honourable Gentleman for North Antrim said, compensate now and use this budget to deliver that compensation.
I thank my honourable colleague and friend for that there, and he's right. There's a real onus in government to reach up and reach out and help. The PHSO also found that the DWP had not given due regard to the impact of the changes in the women's lives and had not offered them adequate support or guidance. The PHSO recommended that government should apologise to the women and pay them compensation for all these things. For the maladministration, government should take positive steps following the PHSO's findings and recommendations and issue that sincere and public apology to the WASPI woman. This would be the significant gesture of respect and remorse, both of those, and a first step towards repairing the relationship between government and the women that we all represent in this chamber today. Secondly, restitution. The second principle of compensation is restitution. This means that government should restore the affected women to the position they would have been in if the changes to the state pension had not occurred, or at least mitigate the negative effects of the changes. Restitution is important for compensating the women for the material and non-material losses they have incurred and for ensuring that they can enjoy a decent and dignified retirement. Wow, how much we all want to see a decent and dignified retirement. Restitution is also a way for correcting the imbalance and inequality caused by the changes and ensuring that the women are not penalised for their sex and their age. The WASPI woman will have different views and demands on what constitutes fair and adequate restitution. Others want a bridging pension or a lump sum payment to cover the gap between their expected and the actual state pension age. There really has to be something, and we need to see that coming forward. Restitution that each woman should receive may also depend on their individual circumstances, such as their income, their health and carrying responsibilities. Quite happy to give way.
I'd like to join the chorus of congratulations to the honourable gentleman from Strangford for organising this debate. Like many here, I'm sure he will have constituents who are starting to receive draft reports from the Ombudsman about the second report, which is the thing which is going to trigger the payment of the restitutions that he's just mentioning. Obviously, they're in draft. We can't comment on them here right now. But were there to be a final conclusion of injustice to go alongside the maladministration, would you agree with me that it is both essential that there is rapid reaction from the government to deal with that and to respond promptly with a proper programme of compensation, but also that it's going to be incredibly complicated because lots of different WASPI women, depending on their age and their conditions, have a different level of injustice, and therefore anything has to be adjusted for that?
Yeah, I do agree with that there, and obviously the Minister has taken copious notes, and the civil servants haven't had their head up since the debate started, so I'm suspecting and hoping that they will have the answers that we need. Government must adopt a flexible and tailored approach to restitution based on the needs and preference of the WASPI woman. Government should consult with the women and the representatives, design a system of recompense that is fair, transparent and accessible. And I call on Government and call on the Minister to consider the recommendations of the PHSO. If you do that, then we'll have a step in the right direction when it publicises its final report on the financial remedy for the women in due course. The PHSO has indicated that it will consider the impact of the changes on the woman's standard of living, health, well-being, as well as the availability and adequacy of alternative sources of income and support. Government should also ensure that the restitution is delivered promptly and efficiently. Yeah, do both those things, and that the women are given clear and accurate information and guidance on how to claim and receive their compensation. Government should also monitor and evaluate the implementation and outcomes of the restitution scheme and adjust if necessary to ensure its effectiveness and also its fairness. Thirdly, and lastly, Mr. Chairman, reconciliation. The third principle of compensation is reconciliation. It's a word often used in society, but reconciliation is what we want here. This means that the government should foster a positive and constructive relationship with the WASPI women and their representatives and address the underlying causes and consequences of the changes to the state pension age. Reconciliation is important for healing the wounds and the divisions caused by the changes and for building trust and cooperation between the government and the women. Reconciliation is also a way of preventing similar injustice from happening in the future. And my honourable friend for North Antrim referred to that, that we do it right now, and yet it will be in place for the future, and of ensuring that the pension scheme system is sustainable and equitable for all. The government should engage in a dialogue and partnership with the women and listen to their views and concerns. The government should also involve the women in the decision-making and policy-making processes related to the pension system and ensure that their voices and their interests are represented and respected. Government should also recognise and celebrate the contributions and achievements of the WASPI women. They have done much, and we salute them and thank them for that, and support their empowerment and participation in society. Government should also address the broader issues and challenge the fact that the pension system and ageing population, such as the adequacy and security of pension income, the availability and affordability of social care, the quality and accessibility of health services, the diversity and inclusivity of the labour market, and the promotion and the protection of human rights. Government should adopt a holistic and long-term approach to these issues and seek the input. Yes, ask the WASPI women for their input and the collaboration of various stakeholders, including the WASPI women, the other pensioners, the workers, the employers, the civil society and the public. Compensating 3.8 million WASPI women is not only a matter of rectifying past injustice, but also a recognition of the hardships that they have endured due to the sudden and unexpected changes to their pension entitlements. And very importantly, recognition of their place in history, helped by this wonderful, wonderful post-war generation of women from all communities right across this great United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland.
Thank you. I was hesitating before intervening on my.
I haven't finished.
You finished?
I'm giving away.
Give way. That is great.
Yeah,
thank you very much, Guy. I apologise. I was hesitating from actually saying anything because I didn't want to stop him in his flow. And in his flow, he was setting out what government needs to do. Does he also recognise that there is an absolutely vital and pivotal role for Parliament to play when we receive the Ombudsman's final report in considering it and making recommendations to government that government then should properly and fully respond to so as to uphold the office of the Ombudsman? Thank you, Sir Gary.
Yeah. No, I haven't finished, Mr. Chairman. I was giving way to the honourable gentleman, but I'm almost there, by the way. I give you a time scale, Mr. Chairman, and I will keep to that time scale simply because everyone here deserves to have an input, and I told you I would do that, and I will do it. The 3.8 million WASPI women, it's a matter of rectifying past injustice, but also a recognition of the hardships they have endured to the sudden and unexpected changes to their pension entitlements. And very importantly, Mr. Chairman, recognition of their place in history, helped by this wonderful post-war generation. That's so important. I say that again because that's why I'm here, to speak for those ladies who contact me in my office all the time. These are the women who have collectively and individually played a pivotal role in shaping and inspiring change in society. We salute those women for what they've done over the years, and I think it's important. They've contributed to the workforce and society throughout their lives, and they deserve to retire with dignity and financial security. My last paragraph, Mr. Chairman, to adhere to our discussion. They were the mothers, they were the nurses, they were the cleaners, they were the dinner ladies, they were the shop workers, they were the teachers, they were the carers, they were the factory and farm workers. The list goes on. That's only a small group of who those people are. They were the trailblazers, Mr. Chairman, the trailblazers for women in society and the role models for subsequent generations of women. So when the time comes today in this debate, let's do the right thing by them. It's imperative that we do.
Thank you, Sir Gary. He is making such a beautiful and wonderful tribute to this group of women that I feel I must rise to mention the 4,000 women and more in my constituency, the 700 who signed a petition in 2016 and waited all these years, and the 2 who are my sisters who very much reflect everything that he's saying. Time is toxic. They've waited so very long Does he agree with me that now we cannot wait any further? Every year we're losing our WASPI women.
I thank the Honourable, and I think it's fitting that the last intervention in my contribution would be from a lady as well who has staff who fall into this category, along with many in the audience today. I think for me, Mr Chairman, and for all of us here, it's a simple thing. Wrong has to be righted. That's our job as MPs. The Minister, there's a lot of there's pressure on all of us on this side of the chamber and on the other side of the chamber to make a country, but the more pressure, I believe, is on the Minister and Government. Deliver what is right. Let's stand by the what they want and make sure that they get what they should have. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. The question is that this House has considered compensation by women affected by state pension changes. Colleagues, all of you who have eyes can recognise that we have a dozen or so to squeeze in about 40 minutes, just under 40 minutes. So it will be 3 minutes each, voluntary. I'll impose it if we don't play ball. I'm sure we'll all be on our best behaviour. Beth Winter has the first crack. Beth.
Thank you, Chair, and I'd like to congratulate my friend, the member for Strangford, for securing this debate and for his tireless work on the campaign. And I also want to pay tribute to the WASPI organisation for its campaigning efforts across Britain. Now, over 4,000 constituents in Cynon Valley, in my constituency, are affected, and I am currently working with an active group of women campaigning for justice for WASPI women. And as has been said, in July 2021, the Parliamentary and Health Service Ombudsman Stage 1 report found clear maladministration in the way the DWP communicated state pension aid changes. And the DWP still has never publicly accepted this finding. And the release of the final pages of Stage 2 report will make findings about the impact of DWP's maladministration. Stage 3 report make recommendations on compensation. We've heard that both are expected in the coming weeks, and I really hope, and I want to echo my colleagues' comments, that the Minister could give us an update and a specific date on which the announcement will be made. In January 2024, the Daily Mirror reported that 260,000 WASPI women had died since the start of the campaign back in 2015. And I'm sure everybody in this room today have heard some harrowing stories of women's experiences, people even losing their houses because of their situation. Tragic cases. Plunged into poverty through no fault of their own, feeling abandoned given the length of time the investigation has taken. And this is why we desperately need action now. I have supported and continue to support the case for full restitution, because that is, in principle, the right demand. But I also welcome and support the WASPI calls for a one-off payment from the government as fair and fast compensation. We must compensate these women, ideally at Ombudsman level 6 band of financial remedy, and the more the better. Like I said, ideally full restitution. And I also welcome serious demands such as those from the APPG and indeed the private members' bill tabled by the member for Kilmarnock and Loudon. The Treasury has saved over £200 billion through the changes that have been made to women's states pension. And this is yet another example of horrific injustices, whether we look at the post office scandal, Hillsborough, the blood inquiry, contaminated inquiry scandal. This is yet another. Time is of the essence. And again, to reflect my colleague's comments earlier, justice delayed is justice denied. So please, can the Minister indicate a hard deadline for the award of compensation payments? Will the women receive the money before the general election? These women have waited far too long. Too many families have seen them pass on without compensation. We must deliver now. Thank you, Chair. And timely debate. Chair, the Government's failure to come forward with proposals for compensating the Women Against State Pension Inequality campaign is a disgrace. Tens of thousands of women have been plunged into poverty through no fault of their own, and many of them now feel abandoned given the length of time that this investigation has taken. Plus, their situation has been severely exacerbated by the cost of living crisis.
As others have said, the government has shown that it can act swiftly to end long-running injustices when it feels the need to do so, and I very strongly feel that the WASPI women should be afforded the same justice and dignity as victims of the post office scandal, and that should happen without a further delay. We must never forget the reality of what's happened here. 3.8 million women were given the bombshell news that their state pension age was going to increase from 60 to 66, just as they were about to retire, and when it was too late for them to do any proper financial planning. Many were already in ill health, and others had taken early retirement and were planning to kind of hang on until they were aged 60 when they would receive the state pension, and all their hopes were dashed. Now, last week we celebrated International Women's Day, and on Sunday we celebrated Mother's Day. But all the fine words about women's contribution to society mean nothing unless action is taken to compensate women who have been so badly treated as the WASPI women. And in Ireland last week, we saw a salutary lesson of how a government who tried to write women off can be defeated when women and their supporters rise up to protect their rights. Now, this government needs to remember that the WASPI women have votes, and so do their husbands, so do their partners, so do their children, and so do their friends and supporters. Chair, it's very important to be very clear what this debate is about, because the Department of Work and Pensions sometimes have a bit of a habit of muddying the waters. The WASPI campaign have spoken to me, and they want me to stress today that their campaign is for fair and fast compensation. They've always supported the pension equalisation between men and women. Their issue is with the unfair way in which the changes were about. So I'd like the Minister to reassure me that in future, when the DWP are asked for comment on the WASPI campaign, they stick to the facts of what it is about and don't issue misleading statements conflating it with other campaigns. The questions the Minister must answer today are very clear. Others will enumerate them, and I make no apology for doing so now, because I want to make sure the Minister and those advising him have the questions fully noted and that they answer them at the end of this debate. 1. The PHSO Stage 1 report was published in July 2021. Do ministers accept the clear findings of maladministration within this first report? 2. It was said around the time of the Stage 1 report that ministers could be proactive in finding a remedy. Do ministers regret not taking this advice and moving more quickly, rather than leaving more and more women waiting and some dying with justice not being done? 3, and finally, given that the investigation by the PHSO has taken more than 5 years and over 250,000 affected women have died during the lifetime of the WASPI campaign, do ministers think the system as a whole has treated women acceptably?
Bob Seeley.
Edinburgh South West, who articulated very much many of our concerns. I think for me there is a very clear message here that the justice is on the side of the WASPI ladies. They are an uncomplaining group, but I do think they have an overwhelmingly obvious case here. They brought up families, often held down jobs, and played a phenomenal role in many of our constituencies, including mine, through many different community groups and organisations like the Women's Institute. And not only was their rate of pay not the same very often when they were in the workplace, but they now find a second injustice in the maladministration, probably in the way that their pensions were dealt with. We may not get a perfect situation, but my message for the Minister is a very, very simple one. If we are found through the course of the next few months, as I suspect we will, that the WASPI case is right and that we need to act on it, and that the government has not behaved and the DWP has not behaved in a way that it should have done, there is a very simple remedy. I personally would love to see a May election, but if we go through to November, the likelihood is that there is going to be another financial statement this year from the government. And I really beg the government and urge the Minister to listen very closely to the voices here. And if it is deemed to be the right thing to do, as it almost certainly will be, that we have the chance, not only for reasons of politics, but actually for reasons of ethics and for reasons for doing the right thing, because we don't want another scandal on this as well as many other issues, for the government to issue some kind of recompense process in an autumn statement, in an autumn financial statement of some kind. So to sum up, justice is on their side. is on the side of the WASPI women. We need to recognise that, and we need to act on it, and the sooner we do so, the better.
Thank you. John McDonnell.
Sometimes we don't have a collective memory here, so I want to go through some of the history very briefly the last 10 years in which I've been dealing with this along with others, because we need to learn the lessons of that. We recognised in 2015 in debates here about the immense suffering that people had gone through and the injustice of the case itself. Between 2015 and 2017, we tried to get a cross-party agreement for a compensation scheme at that time. It was rejected. So therefore, as Shadow Chancellor at that point, I met with all the various campaigning groups, including the WASPI Women. We asked Bryn Davies, now Lord Bryn Davies, our pensions expert, really a prime pensions expert in the field itself, to bring forward a scheme. We brought forward that scheme in 2019. In the normal electoral cycle, it would have been implemented by agreement, hopefully by 2020-2021. It wasn't. We had the election campaign at that point in time. The scheme balanced compensation with readily implementation. It was relatively straightforward and simple, but at that point in time, the argument against it was the cost. The cost was $12 billion a year over a 4-year period, and at that point in time, the argument was this was too expensive. The government had saved $200 million from these women, so $50 billion, yes, may well, $48 billion, may well have seemed expensive at the time. But I remind people, at that point in time, interest rates were on the floor. It was a relatively cheap scheme, paid out over a limited period of time, that would have delivered the resources to these ladies, these women. I believed it was a contingent legal liability anyway, and should have brought forward from contingency, even if we then were forced to borrow at that time relatively cheaply. That would have been paid out by now. It would have been paid out. Women would have been compensated. The 260,000 that had died would have received something, although tragically they're now lost. So the conclusion from all of this I make, I don't want to be here in another 5 or 10 years' time arguing the case. I agree with the Honourable Gentleman. The autumn statement is there. A scheme should be brought forward, relatively simple, so the money can get out the door very, very quickly. What my fear is that there is no sense of urgency in government on this matter at the moment. Cross-party, we've got to create that sense of urgency. My other fear is that the Ombudsman will bring forward its final report, and the compensation levels that will be offered will be trivial. That's unacceptable for the suffering that people have gone through. So my appeal to the government is listen to members on all sides of this House. They rejected and opposed the scheme we brought forward before. Actually, that has most probably enhanced the cost by not taking it at that point in time. Let's grasp the nettle now. You know, sometimes tackling injustices can be expensive, but it's right.
Gavin Newlands.
Mr. Speaker, can I congratulate the member for Strangford for bringing forward this debate in Jim Shannon Hall this morning. He's an assiduous supporter of WASPI. There are over 12,000 WASPI women in Renfrewshire, Mr. Streeter. My constituent, well, just one of those is my constituent whose case is currently with the Ombudsman. She's worked alongside myself and the office team for nearly 9 years, trying to get justice for herself and the other 1950s women. That's how long this saga has been going on. In fact, just the other week, I had my 1,000th constituency advice surgery, which she came along to, and we joked that I think she'd been at 100 of them. But like the rest of my jokes, it isn't funny, Mr. Streeter. The Ombudsman was in no doubt that maladministration took place under the DWP's watch. What is scandalous is that the DWP refuses to accept those findings and instead has buried its head in the sand and left complainants in limbo. The Ombudsman itself stated, "We would also have proposed recommending DWP provide appropriate remedy for others who have suffered injustice because of maladministration. However, DWP has refused to accept our findings of maladministration. Complainants and others affected by DWP's maladministration urgently need resolution." Now, 1950s women have, through no fault of their own whatsoever, experienced huge financial detriment to themselves and their families. Life-changing decisions were taken on the place without the correct information, and only years later were these women suddenly confronted with the consequences of this issue, consequences which could have been avoided if DWP had done its job properly. Further, the Ombudsman said that the DWP is not directly responsible or accountable, and that any financial loss resulting from choices they made is not direct financial loss. I could not disagree with this conclusion anymore. Women should have been taken at their word and not asked to prove counter-evidence to a standard that is utterly unrealistic and impossible for many. There has to be accountability for those failings which the Ombudsman clearly highlighted, but there also has to be justice for those women who are let down by the system and compensation for those who have been adversely affected by decisions taken by the DWP out with their control. My constituent has worked for 50 years, paying her national insurance contributions all along the way, yet does not receive the full state pension. And yet the Ombudsman also concluded that she would only be due compensation at a lower level, at 1 or 2. This is in no way equates to the enormous impact it's had on her physical and mental health, following decisions she took long before she was made aware of any changes to her pension age. There are too many women who have sadly passed away over recent years before seeing some closure for the injustice they have suffered. They will never see compensation or any kind of remedy for what they and their families have gone through. It's time for this government, or indeed any incoming government, to do the right thing by these women and ensure state pension justice for all the women, including my constituent, who have been victims of the DWP's failings and who have campaigned tirelessly for this injustice.
Kenny McCaskill.
Eloquent speech putting forward the case. The two aspects I wish to concentrate on are obviously the injustice and restitution. There is a manifest injustice. Others have mentioned similar injustices that have taken place in our society. Horizon is ongoing, the blood scandal, Windrush, all of these things. They may be down to individual error, they may be corporate error, they may be departmental error. There may require to be criminal proceedings in many instances, there may require to be disciplinary action. But equally, we do require, as a society, to sort out and resolve that manifest injustice. That's why, for example, we have schemes such as the Criminal Injury Compensation Scheme. We live as a society, and those who suffer and sin against one is a sin against all, and the state requires to ensure that they're compensated, especially when it's carried out by a government department. That takes us on to restitution, because the damage that has been inflicted upon these women is not simply that can be quantified, because there's also an unquantifiable loss, which is why the restitution must take some account of the pain and suffering. The situation is that when you grow up and you move from childhood to the world of work, you have dreams and aspirations. Sometimes they may not be fulfilled. For many, they might not be fulfilled, but the dreams exist. But similarly, as you reach an age where you prepare for retirement, many people have dreams about what they wish to do. For some, they may not wish to retire, that's perfectly legitimate, but others do feel that they have contributed their bit. They wish to have some time of their own doing what they want. That may simply be looking after grandchildren, it may simply be tending the garden. It might be that they wish to sail round the world or indeed write a novel. That is a matter for them. But they have those dreams that they were entitled to receive. And yet the problem is that the changes that were done and the instances and the injustice that has been inflicted upon them has taken those dreams away. Many have not been able to look after the grandchildren as they wished, or indeed be able to tend the garden as they wanted, and never mind any of the other more prosaic things that I've suggested they may have been able to do because they're required to keep body and soul together. In Scotland, in damages claims, you do have quantifiable loss, but you also have something we term solation, which is for the pain and suffering that has been inflicted and sustained by the individual. It's very hard to quantify that because you can't say that they've not been given this level of benefit or they've had to pay out this in some other aspect. But there has to be some recognition that these women's dreams were taken away in many instances, that they have not simply suffered a financial injustice, but they have been denied the ability to carry out what they wanted to do, that they prepared to do, and that they should have been entitled to do.
Strangford on his introduction to this important debate. I also declare an interest. My wife is one of the 3.8 million who were affected by the changes to the state pension age. She, however, counts herself as one of the lucky ones. Unlike hundreds of thousands of other women of her generation, this scandal did not condemn her to destitution in her retirement or undo the long-made plans that she had spent her life working towards. For others, of course, the situation was very different. One of my constituents whose story has been collected by the WASPI campaign described the feeling of being robbed of the way of life that I thought I would have had after being informed that she would have to wait till age 66 to receive the state pension. This constituency, who also affected by the collapse of equitable life, found herself unable to secure employment in a jobs market that is defined by systematic discrimination against older women, and thus became reliant on her husband's earnings to survive. There's a grim irony here. Women born in the 1950s were at the forefront of the fight for equal pay and rights in the workplace. A considerable number of them would have been the first women in their families to have their own job. For many, that independent income would have given them the opportunity for the first time to leave abusive or explosive relationships. And yet, later in life, many of these women, to whom all of us as workers owe so much, have found themselves once again reliant on their spouses just to get by. We cannot overstate the sense of betrayal as felt by those who have been affected. A generation of women who were promised, as I was, upon leaving school, that the state would be there to provide a level of safety and security later in life, and have instead found themselves struggling to survive during the worst cost of living crisis in living memory. Last year, the WASPI campaign found that 70% of its members have been forced to reduce their weekly spending, with more than half struggling to pay essential bills and 1 in 4 struggling to afford food. Women who have worked all their lives have been left impoverished. A covenant has been broken. That the WASPI women have been subject to grave injustice beyond question. The Parliamentary and Health Ombudsman report is absolutely clear. There was a clear maladministration in how the DWP communicated information about the state pension age changes, and the Department failed to act upon its own research showing that women born in the 1950s were not aware of these changes. And yet, more than 3 years on, the DWP have yet to come clean and publicly accept these findings. In that time, tens of thousands of affected women have lost their lives, with one dying every 13 minutes. The government's approach seems to have been to hope that the WASPI women will simply go away. Anyone who's met with the WASPI campaigners, as I have, during some of the many lobbies of Parliament, will know that that's never going to happen. In a few short weeks, the Ombudsman expects to publish the next stage of the report, detailing its findings concerning the impact of maladministration on the WASPI women and its recommendations on compensation. The Minister will no doubt urge patience, but the question many WASPI women are asking is how much longer must they wait till they see some form of financial restitution, and they will even still be there by the time that it arrives.
Indeed. Stuart MacDonald.
Paying tribute to the honourable member for Strangford for his persistent and indeed powerful advocacy for the WASPI cause. I'm here to speak up for the WASPI women of Cumbernauld, Kilsyth and Kirkintilloch East, who I've had the honour of working with these past 9 years. Their campaign has been dignified yet determined, but while it has been an honour to work with them, it is also, as others have said, appalling that they, alongside their brilliant colleagues from across the UK, have had to keep fighting for so long. And indeed, along the way, we have lost some brilliant campaigners. Today, I pay particular tribute to my constituent, June Miller, a key figure in the Cumbernauld WASPI group, and who marched just outside this hall in support of WASPI women in October 2018. Tragically, she is one of some 260,000 or so WASPI women to have died during the lifetime of this campaign. Mr. Speaker, it is surely beyond any doubt now that these women have suffered injustice as a result of DWP maladministration, for all the reasons that the Honourable Member for Strangford set out. But the key point is that is precisely what the PHSO Stage 1 report recognises. And so now the DWP must recognise that Stage 1 report and those Stage 1 findings. But recommendations from PHSO should be the starting point, or the bare minimum, for the DWP. To go further would be absolutely welcome, but coming up short most certainly will not be. The PHSO has encouraged DWP to be proactive. Instead, ministers continue to bury their heads in the sand. Mr. Speaker, many billions have been saved by the Treasury through pension reforms. Some of that must be used to put right the wrongs that have been suffered. And the other relevant context here is, of course, the ongoing cost of living crisis. 14 years of austerity, decades of entrenched wage and pension inequality. All of these have impacted WASPI women more than anyone. So fair compensation is not just due, but it's absolutely urgent. Strong arguments have been made that by fair compensation we should mean level 6 compensation because of the profound, devastating or irreversible impacts that these changes have had on them. The women in my local WASPI groups have undoubtedly endured a reduced quality of life for considerable periods thanks to DWP maladministration, and they are going to continue to suffer in that way until their losses are recognised and compensation paid. Mr Chair, the time taken to get to this stage, as others have said, is clearly unacceptable. The Government needs to look at how PHSO and other ombudsmen are better able to deal with cases of this scale. But more immediately, when compensation recommendations are finalised, every effort must be made to get it paid urgently. Those steps must start now so that there is no more unnecessary waiting. But Mr Streeter, the WASPI women are not going to go away, and neither will MPs around this hall today, until justice is done.
Thank you, Sir Gary. I also add my thanks to the Honourable Member for this very important debate and for all the work that he's done in at least the last 7 years that I've been in this place on this very important matter. I rise to speak in support of over 5,000 WASPI women in Ceredigion, and do so by commending, to begin with, the WASPI campaign group in Ceredigion, who've done so much in recent years to support those affected by these pension changes, and also have done so much to raise awareness locally and indeed nationally in Wales of the injustice that those women born after the 6th of April 1950 have suffered as a result of the changes introduced in the 1995 and 2011 Pension Acts. Others have mentioned today, I just want to reinforce the point that this is a generation of women that have suffered greatly throughout their lives. The injustice that they're suffering now has sadly just come upon a lifetime of many injustices. They, as we've heard earlier in the debate, will have entered an unequal workforce. They will have suffered greatly in society as well, due to the inequality that previously plagued the United Kingdom's society as they grew up and came into adulthood. Nevertheless, they are the generation of women who have contributed so much to bring about but also, as we've also heard this morning, they are also the ones that work very tirelessly in various campaign groups and community organisations and causes. And yet, after a lifetime of working diligently, they find themselves at the very end having to suffer financially and in terms of emotional harm due to changes introduced by the state which were not communicated to them as they should have been done. The fact of the matter is that many of these women have, as I think a previous speaker mentioned, do not complain. They live their lives according to the law, and they expect, very reasonably, that the state then recognises that contribution, that social contract, if you like, and yet they've been failed so terribly by the fact of the matter that the Department for Work and Pensions failed to communicate these changes to their pension entitlements. To top it all off, Sir Gary, after the Ombudsman found that maladministration had taken place, the Department and the Government then refused to acknowledge that maladministration. That is rubbing salt into the wound, I would venture, and it's something that I very much hope the Minister can address in his summing up. Others have mentioned how these women have not only suffered financial harm, but also social harm, and their quality of life has been severely impacted. And that's for that reason, I believe that when it comes to compensation, we do have to move away from the level 5 offered by the Ombudsman. It needs to be much higher to reflect the fact that not only have they suffered financially, but also their lives have been put on hold. And, as has been mentioned, sadly, many of them have passed away before seeing justice. So we cannot waste any more time on this matter.
Thank you. Alan Brown.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I would also like to thank the Honourable Member for Strangford for bringing this debate forward and for signing my private member's bill, which is aimed at compelling UK Government to bring forward a compensation framework for the 3.8 million women affected by state pension increase without proper notification, including 13,000 in my constituency. Now, given the Ombudsman concluded stage 1 in July 21, the DWP were guilty of maladministration, Mr Speaker, I and we in here shouldn't be having to force this issue. For once, wouldn't it have been comforting to see a government care to step in and do the right thing by way of remedying an injustice? But of course, if others have said, like the infected blood scandal, the postmaster scandal, the Green Deal mis-selling, they do nothing and hope the issue just goes away. 9 years that have ignored this issue, but still, at least it hasn't gone away, even if, for my liking, too many politicians have already given up. Mr Streeter, these are women who didn't have maternity rights back in the day, who are paid less than men, who are more likely to work part-time, whose private pensions, if they did have them, were smaller than men's private pensions. So that pension age equalisation in reality further prejudiced against these women. especially many had already retired before they got that bombshell notification they would need to wait 6 years before they could access a state pension. And then they found out that the number of NI contributing years to actually receive the full pension had been increased. So many didn't even have the opportunity to actually contribute enough NI contributions to receive the full pension. So that's another double whammy for these women. So it really is time that the government actually just accepted the WASPI call for fair and fast compensation. Money that can be paid out to these women, money that will eventually be clawed back from the government in taxes anyway, but also to provide local spending boost if that money was paid out to these women. But Mr Speaker, I think today we also need to hear from the Labour front bench what is their position. For too long now they've been quiet on this. For too long we keep hearing about Labour is going to stick to Tory spending plans, which is austerity 2.0, £19 billion of future departmental cuts. So I really hope the Labour front bench does commit to providing fair and fast compensation for the WASPI women if the government actually does not step up to the plate, which, let's not be kidded, we can't have any faith in this fag-end government stepping up to the plate. Now, Mr Speaker, when I presented my 10-minute rule bill, I put a number of personal testimonies on the record. I really hope the Government Minister will go back and look at some of these testimonies, because that shows you what life is like for many people that have been affected by the state pension increase. And I don't have time to go through these testimonies right now, unfortunately, but we're talking about people losing their homes, people dependent on their partners, people having to be forced to try and get back into work, people struggling in benefits getting by, people struggling in their small private pensions just because they didn't have enough money and didn't have enough warning for the government. So yet again, I say, pay that compensation and step up to the plate.
Thank you. Ian Byrne.
And thanks to the Honourable Member for Strangford for his efforts fighting this injustice. There are 5,360 women in my Liverpool West Derby constituency affected by the changes made to the women's state pension age by the Pensions Act 1995, and each of these, and of these, 4,000 have been further affected by the 2011 Pensions Act, which accelerated the increases to ages 65 and 66. It's important that they have their voices heard in this place today. Those in West Derby who are part of the 3.8 million women affected in the UK have been left in what I believe is an entirely unacceptable situation as part of this historic wrong, and I firmly and wholeheartedly support the campaigns for pension justice. And I want to place on record in this House the efforts of all those campaigners for justice, including the fantastic women I've met from CEDAW in Law and WASPI. Without their hard work today, this debate wouldn't be happening. And this is something they should never have to fight for in this place, because the government has the power to right this injustice. And I was proud to stand in 2019 on a Labour manifesto which righted this injustice. It's clear from the correspondence I've received and speaking to campaigners in West Derby just how much hurt has been caused by the actions of the DWP. And I want to speak about Jane today, who's phoned me at the weekend and she wants a story heard in Parliament. She told me that the loss of her state pension with no notice meant that she had lost her cherished family home of 30 years. She broke down on the phone. This is completely devastating to her and her family. The plans she had made for the retirement, to have a home with space for their grandchildren to visit her, all now lost, taken away purely because of the injustice and the actions of the DWP. After several years of investigations, it's been reported that stage 2 and 3 of the PHSO Ombudsman's findings on the communications of changes to women's state pension age could be published soon. Can the Minister confirm what the timeline is? Chair, this is an injustice that needs to be addressed urgently, and it's completely unacceptable that the government has so far refused to take action in the right to right this wrong. There is nothing, absolutely nothing, to stop the government taking immediate action to provide compensation, and this has been outlined in this place today. Chair, in November 2022, I went to Downing Street with campaigners and handed in my early day motion number 430. The motion was signed by 87 members in this House and called for full financial restitution to women born in the 1950s. In the 16 years that have passed, months that have passed, this terrible injustice has only grown, and even more women are now facing poverty and total destitution as a result of the government's inaction. I will ask the Minister today, will he reflect on what he's heard and begin to start the parliamentary process to provide the full compensation that thousands of women in West Derby and millions across the country deserve without any delay?
Thank you. Chris Stevens.
Sir Gary, I want to first of all say how much of a pleasure it was on Friday to join the WASPI Glasgow women at the Mary Barber statue to mark International Women's Day. And the clear message from those women is that they're not going away and this issue is not going away. I want to make three quick points, if I can. Other people have touched on this. The historical injustices that 1950s-born women have suffered throughout their whole lives, whether it is not receiving equal pay, and far too many of those women still trying to fight for equal pay, still looking for compensation for equal pay in their workplaces, or even when they were going through their lives and they could not, for example, hire goods or services except with the express permission of either their father or their husband. Or they couldn't get a chequebook unless they had express permissions, because society decreed at that time that it was a man who was the responsible person. What a quaint and fanciful notion that is, Sir Gary. So the injustices these women have received throughout their lives has to be recognised too, and certainly when it came to not telling them that their pension age was changing and that for many of them they were going to have to work for an additional 5 years. The second point I want to make is that it's almost certain that the Ombudsman is going to be sending this issue back to Parliament. And sending this issue back to Parliament to say it's now for Parliament to decide how to resolve the issue and to compensate. That much is certain. The government could have grasped the nettle. They could have recognised that this was coming, and they could have decided that it was time to address that issue, the issue of infected blood compensation for the Post Office. It could have done all of those things, which comes to my third point, Sir Gary. Justice delayed is justice denied. But the longer they wait and the longer they don't address this issue, the price tag will go up. That is an inevitability. We have a budget this week that had £46 billion of unfunded tax cuts, and that £46 billion could have addressed all of those three issues that I have mentioned. And I hope the Minister, when he is on his feet, will tell us how this government should do it, because it should be up to this Parliament to decide it and not try and dump it onto the next Parliament. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you, colleagues, for your cooperation. We're now bang on time, so we turn to our front bench spokesman, Patricia Gibson, SNP spokesperson.
Thank you, Mr Streeter, and I am delighted to participate in this debate today, and like so many other speakers, I wish to pay tribute to the Honourable Member for Strangford for bringing it forward. And I want to begin by also paying tribute to the WASPI women who have campaigned so very hard with so much dignity and determination. And I wish in particular to pay tribute to Ayrshire WASPI and Cunningham WASPI campaigners whose resilience and strength has truly been inspirational in their quest for justice, especially in the face of ongoing extreme provocation through inaction and intransigence from the UK Government on this very important issue of social justice. Now, the UK Government has a moral duty to deliver justice to the WASPI women, the justice that they need and deserve, and we need that to happen urgently. There are 10 clear, perfectly reasonable asks from the WASPI campaign to reach a fair conclusion for the women affected, all of which I and my party fully support. And I don't have time to list them today, Mr Chair, but they are very clear and very reasonable asks and should not be in any way controversial. For years, the women impacted have not just been left in limbo. They have been left in financial distress, poverty, navigating what ought to have been their retirement years after a lifetime of work, stripped of their deserved dignity and retirement, and this has caused untold emotional distress. For 5 long years, the WASPI women affected have waited for the Ombudsman's investigation to end and for its final report and adjudication to be published. And during that time, an estimated 260,000 women have died whilst waiting. That is both tragic and utterly scandalous and completely indefensible. The rightful compensation should be delivered, as we've heard from everybody who's spoken today. It must be delivered promptly, and it must be meaningful and reflective of the hardship and distress and injustice suffered by these women as well, and it must also take into account the significant sums wrongly withheld from these women. There must be no more obfuscation, there must be no more avoidance, there must be no more excuses. The UK government must at long last deliver for these women. There are no more hiding places. Like everyone else in the debate today, I am very angry at hearing over these years how WASPI women have had their retirement plans upended, their hardship that they've been thrown into. And all of this, of course, has been exacerbated by a cost of living crisis, with soaring food prices, soaring energy prices, rising interest rates, higher mortgage payments. Injustices have been worsened by appalling government incompetence and mismanagement, as well as government arrogance and a tone-deaf attitude to WASPI campaigners. And I wish to draw the Minister's attention again to the private member's bill from my colleague from Kilmarnock and Loudon, which would require the Secretary of State to publish proposals for a compensation scheme for women born between the 6th of April 1950 and the 5th of April 1960 inclusive, who have been affected by the increase in the state pension age. Having robbed women of their rightful pension, the government, as everybody is urging them to do today, to turn their attention to putting it right. Because that's how WASPI women feel. They feel that they have been robbed. Now, to govern is to choose, and good governance must have justice at its core. But tell that to the WASPI women, tell that to the victims of the Horizon scandal, and tell that to those impacted by the contaminated blood. Those people would not agree that the government has justice at its core, and why on earth would they? But when mistakes are made by governments, as sometimes they can be, governments need to be big enough and brave enough and decent enough to put these injustices right. So the government must at long last hear and urgently recompense the WASPI women who have been robbed of their rightful retirement after a lifetime of pay discrimination. Then, of course, it must turn its attention to pensioner poverty in general, and it must reform our current pension system, which is not fit for purpose. Any talk of raising the retirement age further must stop, because we know that raising the retirement age disproportionately impacts those on lower pay and lower socioeconomic status. We need an independent savings and pension commission, and we need that without delay as well. The Ombudsman has been clear that these women have suffered from maladministration and injustice. So there's no argument and there's no place left for the UK government to hide. WASPI women deserve the retirement for which they worked all their lives. Everyone deserves dignity in retirement. This shouldn't be a controversial statement, and it's time for delivery, because WASPI women will not, cannot, must not, and should not go away. The government must sort this out urgently.
Thank you very much indeed. Patricia Gibson. Patricia. I'm so sorry. Gilfiness, I beg your pardon. I had a senior moment. Forgive me.
Thank you very much, Sir Gary. It is an honour to serve under your chairpersonship. And can I thank the Honourable Member for Strangford, who was kind enough to participate in my Westminster Hall debate recently on school libraries. And I'm delighted to return the pleasure by attending his debate and responding for the opposition. I'd also like to thank the very many people who turned out today as members in this House of Commons, and who have all spoken so eloquently and so much and all have so much understanding of this issue, which has been that of a long-standing one. And I've also at this point got to say I have to declare an interest because I too am in a 50s WASPy woman. So that can go on record. Thank you. As we all know, many women get a rough deal from their pensions. Women live around 7 years longer than men, meaning our pension wealth needs to go further, yet on average we retire with pension savings of only £69,000 compared to £205,000 for men. Pensions were introduced at a time when the workforce predominantly comprised men as the primary or sole breadwinner, with women expected to rely on husband's pension for an income in retirement. We were systematically denied the opportunity to achieve our own economic independence and security. Thankfully, legislation and societal attitudes have come a long way since the 1970s, but the impacts of these historical practices continue to affect women's economic status in retirement. Even today, a woman's average pay is equivalent to 75% of a man's. A lower salary will inevitably result in lower pension contributions and worse retirement outcomes. Of course.
Thank you very much for giving me, and congratulate also the Honourable Member for Strangford for bringing this debate. And those inequalities you talked about, although many of us are not directly affected, there cannot be a family in this country who does not have a woman or a close relative who has been affected. Do you think that perhaps the government needs to re-examine whether it fully appreciates the scale of this problem, and they should listen to those of us who have been fighting this cause since the day we were elected, and that's many years now?
Thank you for that intervention. Yes, I absolutely agree with you, and certainly we are aware of that pay, the pay gender gap, which is getting bigger and bigger, and the common sense about, the common sense, I've always referred to the fact that women generally live longer than men, and so they lose out at that end as well, that they would only get half the pension from, their if they were widowed. Many of us have taken extended maternity leave to be with our children during their formative years, and we also disproportionately shoulder the burden of care. Half of all women will have taken time out of the workplace for care purposes by the time they are 46, stepping up to look after elderly relatives, meaning they will miss out on vital contributions to their workplace pension. And even if you're one of the 3/4 of working-age women in employment, there's a 33% chance you will be in part-time employment, increasing the chances that women will miss out on the benefits of auto-enrolment under the current regulations. Under the last Labour government, pensioner poverty halved, yet on this government's watch it has risen, so that 1 in 5 pensioners are now living in poverty, which is scandalous. This trend... Yeah, happy to.
She's made some very strong points so far, and she's talking about the last Labour government. The last Labour manifesto promised £58 billion over the course of the next Parliament to give compensation to WASP women. Is that going to be in the upcoming manifesto for the next election?
Well, I'm not here today to announce our manifesto or any of our manifesto commitments, but what I can say is that I have been meeting regularly since I took this role just a few months ago with the WASPy women. I am honoured to be in a dialogue with them, which I believe is, a friendly and honest one, and I will continue to do that throughout the coming months and beyond, should I be in the same position.
I thank her for giving way. So if our dialogue's a friendly and honest one, does that mean she should be able to say, does the Labour Party agree with the principle of compensation for the WASPy women?
I believe I've already answered that. I am not here to announce our manifesto. I'm here to debate like the rest of you have, and I'm here to listen, but I cannot announce our manifesto.
The Honourable Lady for giving way. She's been very generous. I just want to ask her on a personal level. Forget the Labour Party, forget government, forget all of it. On a personal level, does she think that WASPy women should receive the full compensation they are due?
Yeah.
Oh, I've just messed about with this. Sorry. As I said before, I'm not going to announce our manifesto commission. I am here to press the government, like you are, who are now in power and have the ability to do it. As a WASPy woman, you probably would be able to guess, wouldn't you? And that's all I'm going to say on that subject at the moment. Two-thirds of pensioners currently living in poverty are women. For many of us, a lifetime of inequalities will sadly continue into retirement. And the sadness of it is about how many WASPy women have actually lost their lives during this period of time where the government have completely wasted and really not done the thing that they should have done, in my opinion. Many have left their careers, in many cases, to look after elderly relatives or to cope after years of manual work, safe in the knowledge that they could get on their savings for a handful of years until they reached their state pension upon turning 60. Yet many of them found to their horror that their state pension had changed seemingly without warning. Over the years, I've heard harrowing stories from both constituents and friends who are truly struggling, torn between whether to heat or to eat and unable to cope with the cost of their mortgage or their rent. Pensioners are amongst those hit hardest by the cost of living crisis, and the government's failure to get a grip on the situation has led to rampant inflation and food prices spiralling out of control. While I support the policy of state pension equalisation, it's painfully clear that the way in which it was conducted was shambolic at best. Groups such as WASPy were formed not to reverse the policy of state pension equalisation, but to mitigate the effects of the policy. And I commend them for the work in securing an investigation by the Parliamentary Health and Services Ombudsman and their subsequent legal victories, including securing changes to the report. The PHSO is still actively investigating as we speak, and while I do not wish to speculate in what his findings might be, it is a fact that they have found the DWP has committed maladministration in the way it decided to inform 1950s-born women of the changes. I will always listen and engage respectfully with campaigners fighting to right historic injustices, from WASPy women to the Allied Steel and Wire workers, and though I have not been in the role long, I have already met with the representatives of the 1950s-born women on multiple occasions, as well as at previous Labour Party conferences as well. And I will be honoured to continue to go forward with them and keep that dialogue open over the coming months and beyond. I know the Minister, like me, has only been in his role for several months, but I'm sure it is apparent to him that the injustice these women have faced is clear. The poverty many of them continue to face is clear, and it is clear that these women desperately need a resolution to the maladministration they have faced. Therefore, I urge the Minister to act now to put that injustice right as quickly and as fast as possible. And I look forward to continuing the dialogue with the WASPy women going forward. Thank you.
And just a reminder to the Minister to leave 2 minutes at least for Jim Shannon to have the final say. Paul Maynard.
Thank you to Gary. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship. Can I thank the member for Strangford for securing this debate and also to all members who have contributed to it. It's been a valuable and constructive debate focusing on the issues of compensation for 1950s-born women affected by state pension age changes. I recognise there is a huge sense of feeling amongst 1950s-born women about the increase to their state pension age and the way in which this was communicated. We have heard today about people who have had difficult personal circumstances to manage, and their struggles are regrettable in the extreme. That is why I'm grateful to all members who have participated. It is so very important that members on all sides are able to tell the stories of so many of their own constituents. Indeed, I pay tribute to the many of my own constituents who I have sat and listened to on a number of occasions explain their circumstances. It is important that such testimony is uppermost, not just in my mind as the Minister, but that of government more widely. Now, I note that the member who called this debate, the member for Strangford, is a Northern Ireland MP, so just for the record, I should just set out how Northern Ireland manages its own systems for dealing with complaints such as this, which, as he will know, is the Northern Ireland Public Services Ombudsman. And any question relating to Northern Ireland must now be directed to the relevant authorities in Northern Ireland. All DWP policy areas are transferred in Northern Ireland, including pensions. However, the equivalent department in Northern Ireland, the Department for Communities, has historically maintained priority with DWP in matters of social security, child maintenance and pensions. As members of this House are aware, the Parliamentary and Health Service Ombudsman has an ongoing investigation into state pension age communication, which is not complete. The date of the publication is a matter for the Ombudsman. As the investigation remains ongoing, I cannot comment on it, as the Ombudsman's investigations are confidential. The privacy rules extend to all parties that are involved in the investigation. The Parliamentary Commissioner Act, I will do.
I thank him for giving way, and he is right about probity and the fact that Ombudsman's investigations have to remain quiet, but does accept that after stage one, it's still in the government's hands to bring forward compensation. It doesn't have to wait until the conclusion of further stages.
Well, I will come on to the sequencing and importance of the different stages shortly, but I remind him that the Parliamentary Commissioner Act 1967 states that Ombudsman investigations, which are not complete, shall be conducted in private. The Ombudsman has indeed made some information about the investigation public via its website. It published the final version of Stage 1 of its report on the website in July 2021. A report saying that, and I quote, "These women should have at least 28 months more individual notice of the changes than they got. These findings relate to a specific window of time, between August 2005 and December 2007. The report also found, and I quote, that between 1995 and 2004, DWP's communication of changes to state pension age reflected the standards we would expect it to meet. I know that there is frustration amongst members of this House and their constituents around how long the investigation has been ongoing, that the Ombudsman has yet to publish his final report. It is a complex investigation which spans over 30 years, as equalisation of state pension age was enacted in 1995. The Ombudsman provides an independent complaint handling service for complaints that have not been resolved by UK government departments and the NHS in England. The Ombudsman is managing the investigation in stages, and publication of the final report is, as I said, entirely a matter for the Ombudsman. The DWP is mindful and will happily give way.
My right for giving away, and I totally understand what he's saying about the timing of the report. Is there any indication that he can give this group of members of Parliament as to when that report, a rough time for when that report is going to land and when it will be published? Thank you.
As I think I've already said, the matter of the timing of the report is for the Ombudsman to determine, and I've received no indication from the Ombudsman of the timescale to which he is working, much as I'm sure we would all like to know the date when it is coming. The Department for Working Pensions has to be mindful of its independence, but we are cooperating fully with the investigation. We believe it is important to let the independent process conclude so we can then carefully consider the findings and the recommendations that may arise from the final report. I will give way briefly.
I wonder if he can just repeat for the record and give us that cast iron guarantee and reassurance that his department is fully cooperating with the Ombudsman.
I can indeed give that insurance. As I just said, we are fully cooperating at every stage of the Ombudsman's investigations.
Thank you. I understand his position in terms of the specifics and the dates, and it's perfectly clear that we're not going to get any indication of a timeline. But does the Minister accept that the WASPI women paid their dues, that they did their part, and that we've already seen that maladministration has been found? And does the government accept that the breaking of this trust is very much the breaking of a trust upon which our entire democracy is built, and that WASPI women deserve justice as soon as they possibly can?
And I very much hear what she says, and the whole point of the Ombudsman's investigations is to determine the outcome of that process and how justice is to be delivered. I was going to give way first to the SNP's main spokesman, out of courtesy.
Thank you. I thank the Minister for giving way. I was just going to ask him, as has happened with other judgments in a legal context, will the Minister commit his government to, at the very minimum, implementing the judgment of the Ombudsman? Or are they going to try and fight it and obfuscate and kick it into the long grass?
I'm sure she will appreciate the principle that until a final report is published and until we know the contents of that report, I, as a government minister with a duty to manage public money properly, cannot make any such commitment that's such as she makes.
I wonder if the Minister would answer me this. He's hiding behind this need to wait until the final report's out, but around the time of the Stage 1 report, the PHSO said that ministers could be proactive in finding a remedy for 1950s women. What does he say to that?
Well, I simply don't believe I'm hiding behind anything. The Ombudsman's inquiry is taking through the processes that the Ombudsman itself has set out. I think I've given away a number of times now, and I've been very generous. I'm conscious I need to finish my contribution and then allow the moment for Strangford to comment. I'm sorry, but if there is time towards the end, I will try to give way. But I need to set out the factual information that everyone here has been asking me to deliver in this speech, so I will make some progress. The announcement in 1993 to equalise the state pension age addresses a long-standing inequality between men and women. Changes to state pension age were made over a series of acts by successive governments, following public consultations and debates in both Houses of Parliament. All women born after the 5th of April 1950 and all men born after the 5th of December 1953 are impacted by state pension age changes. State pension age is currently 66 and is due to rise again to age 67 between 2026 and 2028, as confirmed by the recent government review of state pension age. The government also committed within this last review to conduct a further review within 2 years for the next government to consider age 68. The further review will be able to consider the very latest evidence. These reforms have focused on maintaining the right balance between affordability and sustainability of the state pension and fairness between generations. Women retiring today can still expect to receive the state pension for over 21 years on average, over 2 years longer than men. And if equalisation had not taken place, upon reaching the age of 60, they would be expected to spend on average over 40% of their adult lives in receipt of state pension. I would just like to say a few words about the processes of the Ombudsman's investigation, just for clarification and to place on the record. The Public Health and Services Ombudsman published its Stage 1 report on the 20th of July 2021. PHSO found maladministration in the steps the department took between 2005 and 2007 in relation to notifying the women affected. In December 2022, the PHSO submitted their Stage 2 findings, provisional Stage 3 findings for comment, and published a high-level summary on their website, concluding that the maladministration had caused injustice. Following the PHSO's Stage 2 findings in December 2022, the WASPI campaign initiated judicial review proceedings against the PHSO, arguing the Ombudsman's approach to calculating when letters should have been sent ignored pauses in the DWP's letter-writing campaign, which meant women should have had notice far earlier than the Ombudsman had assumed, and so could have made different decisions to avoid some of the financial impact on them. Following an agreement between WASPI and the PHSO, the High Court granted a consent order quashing the PHSO's final Stage 2 report in May 2023. The consent order specifically requested that the PHSO revisited those sections of the Stage 2 report dealing with the 28-month delay calculation. The Stage 3 provisional view on remedy had not been finalised by the PHSO, so it did not require consideration by the court. We responded to the provisional Stage 3 report in early February 2023. The PHSO sent all parties to the complaint a revised provisional Stage 2 report in November 2023, and it is that which we are waiting the publication of. I've listened carefully. I have given way, and I'm running out of time. I do apologise. I've listened carefully to the arguments made today, and would like to set out perhaps further the range of support available both for those making provision for their retirement and then once they reach state pension age. In 2016, the state pension was reformed with the introduction of a new state pension to be simpler, more sustainable, with a very clear objective, providing a foundation for private saving. In this way, the state provides a base to which people can add to provide the pension they want through their retirement. The new state pension improves outcomes for many women, carers and self-employed people who often did less well in the past. State pension outcomes are projected to equalise for men and women over a decade earlier than they would have done under the old system. On average, women receiving the new state pension receive around £18 per week more than women under the pre-2016 system. Under the new state pension, on average, women currently receive 97% of the amount received by men. This compares to 85% under the pre-2016 system. Automatic enrolment has helped millions more women save into a pension, many for the first time, with participation rates for women catching up with those for men. Pension participation among eligible women working in the private sector was 86% in 22, up from 40% in 2012. I should also mention pension credit, extra money to help with daily living costs for people over state pension age and on a low income. It tops up a person's other income to a minimum of £201.05 per week for single pensioners and £306.85 per week for couples. People with a severe disability, carers and those who remain responsible for a child or young person who lives with them can get more. Pension credit can also include extra amounts for certain housing costs, such as ground rent or service charges. The pension credit caseload is just under 1.4 million, of which 66% are female. In fact, of the total caseload, 63% are single women. People receiving pension credit may also get help with other costs, including rent, via housing benefit and council tax. The latest statistics show that in 2021 to 22, the poverty rate for pensioners had decreased by 2 percentage points since 2010. Similarly, for both female and male pensioners, there was a decrease of 2 percentage points over the same period. In 2021 to 22, there were 200,000 fewer pensioners in absolute poverty after housing costs than in 2010. For 2024 to 25, working age and extra cost disability benefit rates will increase by 6.7%, and relevant state pension rates, including the standard minimum guarantee in pension credit, by 8.5%, following the 10.1% increase in April 2023. I'm afraid I'm just about to conclude because I only have a minute left before the member for Strangford needs to have his concluding say. In conclusion, I would like to thank the honourable member for Strangford for raising such an important issue that I know concerns so very many people, thousands across each of our constituencies. I have the greatest sympathy for anyone who has found themselves in difficult circumstances, but I believe the welfare state can be and is effective in providing support for those that need it. In particular, there is a range of established support this government provides for people either nearing or over state pension age. And additionally, we have made cost of living payments available to those who are most vulnerable. As I've outlined, the government takes the matter of state pension age extremely seriously. The department is committed to giving the best service it can, and we will very carefully consider the Ombudsman's final report. Thank you.
Thank you. Jim Shannon to wind up. Jim.
Mr. Chairman, can I first of all thank each and every one of the honourable and right honourable members for their contributions. I understand, doing a quick head count there, Mr. Chairman, we had some 26 backbenchers and counting the shadow and the minister as well, who came along to make a contribution. Why did they do that? They did that because there's a wrong to be righted, and that's the reason why. The honourable lady for, and I just do a couple of very quick comments. The honourable lady for Edinburgh South West referred to, and I quote her, she said, government should be proactive to finding a solution. That's exactly what we're asking for. Now, have we seen that this morning? With respect, Minister, I don't believe we have just yet. With that in mind, I would encourage the Minister to continue discussions with his department to ensure that these matters are addressed. We asked for an apology for the WASPI woman. We asked the issue of maladministration to be addressed. It's quite simple when maladministration has been categorised by the department itself. And if it's been done, then for goodness sake, get it sorted. You know, I really can't understand why not. Compensation is still outstanding. Are we moving closer to it? We can't get a time or a date. We really need to have that in place. Every member here wants that to be in place. And the delay will cost one. The Honourable lady, one of the Honourable ladies, the First Lady for Cynon Valley, actually referred to the 260,000 people who have died. Mr Chairman, how many more will die until government dithers to get the job done? So on behalf of the 3.8 million WASPI women, I would suggest to the Minister, with respect, you know I'm always try to be at least nice to everyone in this chamber, because that's my nature, but we really do need to have an answer to our request. The 10-minute rule bill that the Ministers at the members put forward, let's do that. So again, on behalf of all the ladies here in the chamber and those who aren't here, those are the people we're fighting for. Minister, I was going to say get the finger out, but let's get it done. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, colleagues. Please, those leaving the chamber, please do so quickly and quietly. The next debate is about to begin.